From Creamer Media in Johannesburg, this is the Real Economy Report. Our top stories this week. Tom Albanese believes that Rio Tinto is underinvested in Africa. A new biofuels technology is to benefit the agricultural sector. And the South African government, labour unions and business have come together to build a better mining industry. Martin Creamer interviews diversified miner Rio Tinto CEO Tom Albanese, who anticipates the African continent becoming the site of the British-Australian multinational's newest iron ore growth vector.
Over the course of the past few months, certainly as a management team, we've been asking ourselves, are we sufficiently invested in Africa? And from my own perspective, I do believe we're underinvested in Africa, in the context of the size, the breadth, and the scale of a company like Rio Tinto. That's why we have projects such as Simandou in West Africa, where I'd like to be taking that along, and I'd like that to be, our newest growth vector in the iron ore business, to supplement the iron ore growth that we have already in the iron ore production we already have in Australia.
Logistics for iron ore is an issue in Australia. It's an issue everywhere. It's going to be a bigger issue in Guinea.
The Pilbara, for example, every year we're selling 220 million tons of product. We're talking about in Guinea, a starting production base in the 70 million ton range. So that would be one of the largest civil projects needed in Africa.
Newly launched technology provider Stellenbosch Biomass Technologies plans to commercialize a US conversion technology to produce bioethanol and eventually biofuels from cellulosic material in southern Africa. Chanel de Bruin has more.
Stellenbosch Biomass Technologies, SBMT, holds the exclusive right to commercialize US-based Mascoma Technologies' consolidated bioprocessing technology in southern Africa. SBMT Director Professor Emile van Zyl explains that the technology, which allows for the production of second-generation biofuels from non-food lignocellulosic plant material sources, could greatly benefit the local agricultural sector.
Until now, first-generation technologies have had the complication that it compete with food because they're using things like maize. This second generation technology, you don't have to compete with food. You can actually use the agricultural residues. So first off, it can be parallel to agriculture. But that's not where I would like to see it. Towards a sustainable future, it can actually be another lifeline to agriculture, and I think that is where the great benefit would be. I mean, at the moment, you're probably aware that the maize production, we have an overproduction this year, and that's going to have a dramatic impact on the price of maize. It may actually bring that some farmers are going out of business. If you have an alternative market for your feedstock, or if you can utilize the agricultural residues in an alternative way, it actually can help you through tough times like this with the drought. So biofuels done right is not only a sustainable solution, but also a lifeline to agriculture.
The rollout of the technology could also create jobs and assist in reducing the region's greenhouse gas emissions.
Mining Weekly attended the historic June 30th joint declaration, where 13 commitments were made that will boost both the industry as well as South Africa's socio-economic fabric. Martin Creamer reports.
The South African mining industry has been a scene of government, labour and business conflict for decades. But the country has now moved as a collective to replace conflict with growth and transformation. Mineral Resources Minister Susan Shabangu has presided over the change.
We've got to be effective. We've got to make sure that we grow this industry in a way that takes and makes South Africa a better country.
There is remarkable stakeholder convergence across a spectrum of growth and investment matters, all the way through to beneficiation, skills development, hostile eradication and equity ownership. Dr. Iraja Bedian is the Minister's economic advisor.
South Africa does have the potential, the capability and the capacity to become and to regain its global competitiveness.
There have been concerns about the extent to which South Africa has fallen down the global rankings in mining, and a sharp critic of South Africa's lack of competitiveness in mining has been regulatory lawyer Peter Leon.
It's a very important step that's been taken today, and the important thing about it is that it's in a sense, a joint venture between the government, labour and business. One could criticise it for being a corporatist approach, but the big change is, in the past, the DMR, the Department of Mineral Resources, has simply told mining companies what to do through legislation or through regulations. This is the first time, I think, since the mining charter was agreed back in those difficult days in 2002, that the key players in the industry, including labour, have got together and agreed a way forward for the industry.
South Africa has a recent history of being able to take adversity and convert it into consensus. The National Union of Mine Workers, as well as the Solidarity and UASA unions, have all come to this party, as have business and government. NUM President Senzini Zonkwana.
As NUM, I want to join you by saying that the delay was painful, but at last I believe that as we sign, we're signing committed.
South Africa is a land with incredible possibilities.
This is a good example of collaboration between the social partners and the fact that even the shareholders of mining companies, in terms of the chamber, casted their vote towards this process.
The stakeholders have the zeal, focus, and commitment to make the mining industry attractive to investors.
We had to ensure that we come up with a strategy that we were going to set us on a path to sustainable development and growth, and also to thoroughgoing transformation.
All stakeholders had their say and all committed themselves to being regularly monitored and checked to see that South Africa and South African mining is on a firm path to growth and transformation. Peter Leon.
The most significant aspect from my perspective as a regulatory lawyer operating in this industry is a very clear commitment, both in this document and by the Minister today, that the MPRDA, the Mineral Petroleum Resources Development Act, will be substantially amended during the course of 2011, during the parliamentary session next year, to give effect to the agreement which is reflected here. And one of the, I think, very important things that this document recognizes is that the architecture of the MPRDA, not just its implementation, is defective. So there's now an admission by everybody, including the government, that they need to go back to the drawing board and fix the issues in the Act, which I've been concerned about for years, like ministerial discretion, like lack of compulsory time periods for licensing provisions, things like that.
As part of this implementation, we need to create the monitoring infrastructure, if you like, monitoring and reporting infrastructure, that the society, the media, the analysts are put in the picture of how online are we with what we adopt.
And there is an enormous amount to do that only a multi-stakeholder body can do. I, for one, look forward to holding them to account on the provision of infrastructure, innovation, sustainable development, beneficiation, skills development, and living conditions.
And now for a sneak preview of this week's Engineering News magazine. In this week's cover story, broadcasters and manufacturers warn against turning back the digital migration clock. We report that Gauteng motorists will know by October exactly how much they will pay per kilometre to travel on Gauteng's new and improved freeways. And Ford sets up a Gauteng facility to nurture black-owned component suppliers. And in Mining Weekly this week, in our cover story, we highlight the historic joint declaration to grow and transform mining. JSE-listed gold and uranium miner Simmer and Jack Mines initiates the closure of 2 more shafts at its Buffelsfontein gold mine. And international pressure mounts on the DRC over its controversial decision to cancel a mining license previously held by First Quantum of Canada. That's Creamer Media's Real Economy Report. Join us again next week for more news and insight into South Africa's real economy.